Sir, can you share your portfolio?
Sure. Yeah, so this is the portfolio. This is 7.5 crores is stocks and mutual funds. So this one's up by 3 times. This is 5 times. This is 3.5 times. This is 5 times. Stuff like that.
If you have to start all over again, so what would be your strategy?
What I've done is I've taken schemes here and I've basically made entire box for myself. If the person is starting afresh, someone who's only earning, let's say, saving only 5,000 rupees, the idea should be to move towards this particular thing. अगर मैं आज 25 की एज का होता, so that would be primary thing which I'll do.
If somebody is choosing mutual funds, तो उसमें AI का कैसे leverage कर सकता है?
So you have to go to. So if you click on it and see, now this is what I wanted to explain. There has to be some catalyst in our lives to help us propel in our journey. अब मेरे केस में क्या हुआ, surprisingly it was my. अब ये भी एक problem है, people start getting very straight jacketed. मैं ना सिर्फ index funds ही करूँगा. भाई क्यों? I mean, what is the compulsion with that?
Can you share the selection criteria of individual stocks?
I can share a few of them with you. So let's take top 4. This will give you a set of companies which shows that this particular company is increasing its.
There was a, I think, strategy that you made around index fund. You can get around 26%. So can you share that? Sir, we have seen like lot of videos. Even Charlie Munger says कि पहला जो 1 crore है, that is very difficult to make. Recently, somebody did a podcast with Ramdev Agarwal and he said कि पहला 1 crore तो भगवान ही बना के देता है. And you have made like 10 such crores. So why do you think like it is true कि first CR is very difficult?
Yeah, it's difficult because of a few reasons, Hemant. First is that, when you start out, obviously your income is on the lower side. So that becomes your primary problem कि अगर बचने वाली आपके पास 5,000 रुपए हैं, then 5,000 rupees, making that into a crore takes obviously a lot more time.
Right.
Second is the fact that your awareness of financial products, as in which products are actually good to do, even that is on the lower end. So when you start, I think typically you start with आपके dad बोलते हैं LIC policy ले ले या PPF में डाल दे. Your neighborhood uncle will come and, he'll sell you a LIC policy, which is 5.5-6% kind of instruments. तो वो awareness भी आपका कम होता है, so that also becomes a problem. And the third thing which I think is that, there has to be some catalyst in our lives to help us propel in our journey. सबके life में कुछ एक होता है, which kind of propels you up. अब मेरे केस में क्या हुआ, surprisingly it was my PPF account. So when I started putting money into PPF, उस टाइम पे only 70,000 was allowed. So this is way back in 2002. And my dad used to come and say on April 2nd कि चलो check दे करके. So I used to give him the check. And उससे क्या फर्क पड़ रहा है मुझे पता नहीं लगा. Then in 2015, what I realized is that interest which I got on all my previous numbers which I had put in was upwards of 3 lakhs. So, it became like a catalyst in my life कि अरे यार मतलब ये तो बहुत बढ़िया है कि डाला मैंने सिर्फ 1.5 लाख but 3 लाख का तो मुझे इंटरेस्ट मिल गया. So I think that also kind of plays in your mind. और जब पहला 1 crore हो जाता है तो then the brain automatically motivates you to do the next crore and the crore after that. Like I can tell you my scenario right now that now there is adequate corpus that the way I calculate is that यार महीने में अगर 1% भी हो गया तो 7-8 लाख रुपए तो अपना बढ़ ही जाएगा, So अगर 7-8 लाख आपका एक महीने में बढ़ रहा है, then look at my calculation because effectively फिर मैं 1 साल के अंदर 1 और करोड़ बना सकता हूँ.
Right.
Actually, a lot of people forget this that जो provident fund है, it is actually forcing you to get into the savings habit. So जब कोई मुझे बोलता है ना कि मेरे पास savings नहीं है, ऐसे क्यों, आपने PPF का पैसा नहीं है आपके पास? So then they will get that realization, अरे हाँ PPF का तो है मेरे पास, but the problem with most people, किसी को पता नहीं कि कितना है उनके PPF अकाउंट के अंदर, right? Sorry, PPF नहीं, EPF के अंदर especially. So that becomes a problem, but हाँ मतलब for some people it's a big part of their corpus actually, the EPF thing, without even us knowing about it.
Sir, can you share your portfolio, like your screen, and show us कि अच्छा these are the top 3 strategies or might be the mutual funds that worked?
Sure. Yeah, so this is the portfolio. This is 7.5 crores is stocks and mutual funds. Other than this, I have a piece of land, which is about 2 CR के आसपास होगा. And I have about 1.2 in EPF, PPF. So it's 6.2 at the moment. It's a combination of everything. If you look at that XIRR thing, so this is generally what I aim for, that, whatever is the category average, मेरा XIRR उसके ऊपर होना चाहिए. So over a 5-year period since 2015, which is like, perfect for me because मैंने start ही seriously उसी time पे किया था. So different platforms give me different XIRR numbers. So this one's giving me 12.8, someone gives me 13.8 also. So, but the real thing is that वो category के ऊपर होना चाहिए. I also wanted to explain this. So today equity is about 3.3 crores, while debt and hybrid is this much. And what's unique about this hybrid is that ये जो 1 crore रुपए है, all of it is definitely going to go into equity. So I've done my STPs right now. So those STPs are already happening, and every month about 3.5 to 4 lakh rupees actually goes from hybrid into equity. So the equity portion is actually increasing by 4 to 5 lakhs every month. And, that's how this entire thing has been constructed.
आप में से जितने भी लोग हैं जिन्हें स्टॉक मार्केट इन्वेस्टिंग में इंटरेस्ट है, उनके लिए एक छोटा सा अपडेट है कि जो शुभम है वो संडे को एक वेबिनार कर रहे हैं. तो जिन्हें नहीं पता शुभम के बारे में, शुभम 29 की एज में फाइनेंशियली फ्री हो गए थे. इसलिए अमेजॉन यूएस की जॉब छोड़ के वो बैंगलोर इंडिया शिफ्ट हो गए और एक फुल टाइम इन्वेस्टर बन गए. तो अगर आप इस वेबिनार में इंटरेस्टेड हैं और शुभम के एक्सपीरियंस से सीखना चाहते हैं, तो इसके लिए आप डिस्क्रिप्शन में दिए गए लिंक से वेबिनार के लिए रजिस्टर कर सकते हैं. और जैसे ही आप वेबिनार के लिए रजिस्टर करते हो, यू विल गेट अ फ्री शॉर्ट कोर्स ऑन योर व्हाट्सएप कि जो स्टॉक प्राइस है किसी भी कंपनी का, वो इंक्रीज या डिक्रीज कैसे होता है, प्लस अ कैलकुलेटर जो शुभम यूज करते थे जब वो अपनी फाइनेंशियली फ्री की जर्नी में थे. इसके साथ साथ जब आप संडे को वेबिनार ज्वाइन करोगे तो यू विल ऑल्सो गेट अ फ्री गिफ्ट देयर. हम एक वेबिनार में मैक्सिमम 400 लोगों को एक्सेप्ट करते हैं. अगर इस वीक का वेबिनार आप मिस करते हैं तो आपको अगले हफ्ते तक वेट करना पड़ेगा. So if you have to start all over again, so what would be your strategy कि किस तरीके से आप करोगे ताकि उसी टाइम को क्रंच करके you could do it like in a lesser.
हाँ, एक्चुअली 3 ही चीजें होती हैं मेरे ख्याल से. स्ट्रैटेजी बोलते हैं, बट एक्चुअली इट्स ओनली 3 वेरिएबल्स. इट्स द कैपिटल दैट यू पुट इन, सेकंड इज द रिटर्न्स दैट यू रिसीव, एंड थर्ड इज द टाइम यू गिव इट. तो ये मतलब बहुत एक सिंपल फॉर्मूला है, और इसी के अंदर आप बहुत सारे परम्यूटेशंस एंड कॉम्बिनेशंस कर सकते हैं. So to answer your question, let's start with capital. तो अगर मैं आज 25 की एज का होता, 20 साल पहले की बात है, तो I would probably be working extremely hard in increasing my income. Because मुझे पता है कि जितना ज़्यादा कैपिटल होगा उतना मैं उसको काम पे लगा सकता हूँ. So that would be primary thing which I'll do. Second is on the returns part. So obviously I would not have put in money. मतलब वैसे तो मैंने कोई LIC पॉलिसी नहीं लिया, बट एक बार मुझे ड्यूलिप लेना पड़ा. सो एंड दैट टू एट अ 36% एक्सपेंस रेशियो इन द फर्स्ट ईयर. सो आई वुड प्रॉब्ली नॉट हैव डन थिंग्स लाइक दैट. आई वुड नॉट हैव पुट मनी इनटू फिक्स्ड डिपॉजिट्स. लाइक सब कुछ ही फिक्स्ड डिपॉजिट में चला जाता था. एंड आई वुड हैव स्टार्टेड माय सेविंग्स जर्नी आल्सो अ लिटिल अर्लियर with a higher proportion going into equity. Not all of it, but definitely a higher proportion going into equity. And thirdly, एक time का एक estimate होता मेरे पास, that even today when I look at, whenever I do my calculations or someone asks me, I simply, sir, करोड़पति कैसे बने? So I always tell them कि 10,000 रुपए का SIP करो, 12% का कोई भी आपको म्यूचुअल फंड दे देगा, 20 साल में आप बन गए करोड़पति. अब वो आपकी श्रद्धा है कि आप 10,000 करोगे, 20,000 करोगे, 50,000 करोगे. But yeah, if it is one mutual fund, for example, so let's start with someone who's only earning, let's say 5,000, saving only 5,000 rupees. So there the simple thing would be to go for, let's say, something like a flexi cap or a multi-cap fund. These are very safe, diversified choices which are there. When I say safe, what I mean is, it's not very cyclical, as in the fund manager has enough flexibility to figure out how much to put into equity, when to stop, and all that stuff. So they do that well. Usse bhi save karna, so there is the balance advantage fund, but I would not suggest it to a 25-year-old. If it was something a little higher, so let's say 50,000 rupees, for example, then I generally suggest a very balanced approach. That is, you do a combination of funds, maybe 4 or 5 different funds. so that it can capture different facets of portfolio building. So for example, one of the simple things that we do is at least I do, is something which I call the 3x3 grid. So that really works well for me. And वो क्या करता है, आपको एक structure दे देता है कि how you should be investing in mutual funds, so that you can have a very peaceful kind of working. So what I generally do is I will do a series of SIPs. So if it's 50,000 rupees, then it's basically 5 funds with 10,000 rupees SIP, and I would persist with it for as long as I can.
So can you explain that 3x3 grid if you have any visual?
Sure. Absolutely. So what a 3x3 grid does is, its basic function is to kind of put a structure to your mutual fund portfolio. This can be applied even if you already have a mutual fund portfolio. अगर आप पिछले 10 साल से भी कर रहे हैं, it's not a problem. You can still apply on it. So the way it's structured is that you have the market capitalization on, let's say, the vertical axis. So there is large cap, mid cap, and small cap. Yeah. And on the horizontal axis, we try and put the different styles of investing. So for example, we have something called the growth style of investing. We have the value style of investing, and which is getting a bit popular, is the momentum style of investing. You can add more. So you can have quality, you can have alpha, you can have earnings, and other styles of investing. And now your job is very simple. So for you to make a very structured kind of a portfolio, you have to fill in this box. So for example, when it comes to large cap focus and growth, let's say an active fund, you can go for the Nippon large cap fund, which is probably the best fund in this category. If you want to look at value and you want to look at large cap, then it has to be the PPFAS flexi cap. Although PPFAS flexi cap growth bhi karta hai, value bhi karta hai, thoda beech mein hai, but generally falls under large cap value. Similarly, if you want momentum, you can look at something like the Nifty 200 Momentum 30 fund, index fund, right? The same thing can be applied for mid caps as well. So you can have, let's say, something like an HDFC mid-cap fund, a Motilal Oswal mid-cap fund, which is very popular. And within small cap also, you can have, some small cap. So let's take the Bandhan small cap fund. For momentum, you can have, again, let's say an index fund like the Nifty mid-small. So I'm doing one momentum fund for mid and small both put together. Like it's easier ho jaye. And you can use something like the momentum quality 100 index fund, and फिर value में भी आपको कुछ मिल ही जाएगा. So I'm just going to take one as an example. Let's take the UTI Nifty 500 value 50 index fund. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken 7 different schemes here, and I've basically made this entire box for myself. So वो कहते हैं ना, think out of the box. So this 3x3 grid is where you start thinking inside the box.
Right.
इससे 2-3 advantages हैं. Number one, you now get a very structured approach to what you're doing, which means आप इधर उधर भटकोगे नहीं. When I say भटकोगे नहीं, you won't try and go for a thematic fund. You won't try and get into अरे नया NFO आया है, चल उसमें पैसा डाल देते हैं. Your thinking will be very clear at the moment. That is number one. Second advantage is that you aren't at the mercy of one particular style or one particular market cap also. So you have a very balanced kind of a portfolio, so that if, let's say, growth goes for a toss, then probably value takes over, and you can kind of expect a very less volatile kind of a portfolio. So that's another massive advantage that comes in. The third thing, if you notice here, I've used a mix of index funds and active funds.
Right.
अब ये भी एक problem है, people start getting very straight jacketed कि मैं ना सिर्फ index funds ही करूँगा. भाई क्यों? I mean, what is the compulsion with that? So if you have someone like, this particular fund doing extremely well, 15-16% per annum over the last, 20 years or so, then what's wrong with active fund also? So, again, this approach keeps that active versus passive fund aside, and it allows you to put in whichever you think is the best fund for this particular box.
So let's say if I have 7,000 extra rupees to invest, so I'll just invest 1,000 in every single fund that you have mentioned, at least the category wise.
हाँ, उसको मतलब मैसअप नहीं करना अपना पोर्टफोलियो. डोंट बी लाइक मी, आई हैव टू मेनी फंड्स इन माय पोर्टफोलियो. बट हाँ, मतलब द फर्स्ट थिंग आई वुड डू इज कि इफ यू ऑलरेडी हैव एन एग्जिस्टिंग पोर्टफोलियो, मैं सबसे पहले आपको बोलूंगा कि आप पहले अपना रिव्यू करो कि क्या स्ट्रक्चर दिया आपने अपने फंड को. इफ द पर्सन इज स्टार्टिंग अफ्रेश, देन the idea should be to move towards this particular thing. So I forgot to explain the allocations which I put in. So again, this depends on your preference. So in my case, I put 50%. I try and have my 50% of my portfolio into large caps, 25% is in mid caps, and 25% is in small caps. So going back to the question that Hemant had initially asked me, if a person is very young, तो उसको क्या करना चाहिए? वो आपकी श्रद्धा है. आप instead of putting 50% in large cap, you can put 33 also, which is also not a bad approach. But given my current situation, age, etc., I prefer 50, 25, 25. And between growth, value, and momentum, जो आप पूछ रहे हैं अभी शुभम, I put in 70% in growth, 15% in value, 15% in momentum. This need not be very, cast in stone कि इतना ही होना चाहिए करके, but generally I have my comfort around a 17, 15, 15 with respect to the style of investing.
So शंकर, हम इस कैटेगरी तक तो पहुंच गए कि भाई ठीक है, अब जैसे somebody starting out, like he doesn't have like existing funds.
Correct.
तो अब इन कैटेगरीज में अंदर कौन से फंड्स भरने हैं वो कैसे डिसाइड होगा?
तो वो डिसाइड करने के लिए कोई ऐसा मैसिवली साइंटिफिक अप्रोच तो नहीं यूज करता. व्हेन आई से साइंटिफिक, लॉट ऑफ पीपल टॉक अबाउट थिंग्स लाइक सॉर्टिनो, अल्फा, beta,
ratio,
R square and all that stuff, sharp ratio. So I don't use most of that. मैं जो actually prefer करता हूँ, which is actually very difficult to do, is basically to understand the fund philosophy. So for example, if you look at any of these funds, जैसे Sailesh Rajbhan, he takes care of Nippon large cap fund. And आपको ताज्जुब होगा, ये फंड शायद ये 20 साल से या 19 साल से चला रहे हैं. If you take all the equity funds, which are there for the last 20 years, और उसके ऊपर आप एक descending order sort करेंगे by returns, the number one fund is actually the Nippon Pharma Fund. And Nippon Pharma Fund is handled by the same person who takes care of the Nippon Large Cap Fund, which is Mr. Pant. So actually, I like the strategy which he employs. So he is a very large cap heavy kind of a person. He uses something called contrarian GARP. GARP is growth at reasonable prices. So he uses contrarian GARP, which means वो sectors जो काफी गिर गए हैं या वो stocks जो काफी गिर गए हैं, but they are large cap with good quality businesses and the valuation is currently low, but the growth has not become low. He tries to pick that particular thing. So that's been mostly his secret to doing extremely well. So I focus more on the fund managers.
शंकर, आई थिंक इसमें एक चीज है. सो जैसे बिकॉज यू डू एक्टिव इन्वेस्टिंग एज वेल, राइट? सो यू कैन इजीली जज compared to others who like have no idea about stocks or like active companies. So evaluate करना कि भाई वो कैसा कर रहा है, उसके philosophy क्या है, is very hard for a newbie.
It is.
Right. So in that case, कोई formula या कोई numbers or any like quantitative things that somebody who is new can do to figure out, okay, this is good, this is not good, this is what I have to do, this is what I don't have to do.
The easiest thing is obviously to look at the consistent performers. Okay, that is what is generally I look at. So if you have any fund which has generally is between Q1 and Q2, you probably know that Q1 and Q2 means it's within the top half of all the schemes in terms of returns. Then it's generally a good bet to have. That said, मुझे ऐसे भी schemes पता है जो कभी भी Q1, Q2 में गए नहीं है पिछले 10 साल में. So it's better to avoid those kinds of funds. But if you are within Q1 and Q2, it helps. What's more important is probably for a newbie is the category that they put their money into. So instead of thinking कि मैं अपना सारा पैसा small cap, and this is the mistake a lot of people make, they think that अगर मैं अपना सारा पैसा स्मॉल कैप में डाल दूंगा ना तो वो मुझे मैक्सिमम रिटर्न देगा. But the data shows that that's not actually true. In fact, in the last 15-20 years, the category which has done the best is actually the mid cap index. So it's not the large cap index, it's not the small cap index, but it's the mid cap index. So I think this is where, if a newbie comes to me, I would probably say that first choose the category, which I would suggest it to be a flexi cap or a multi cap kind of category. Or uske andar go for those schemes which are consistently in the top half of their category for a decent amount of time. So
where we will get the data, like these are the...
आपको किसी भी platform में मिल जाएगा. You can look at value research online, advisor खोज है. There are a lot of these platforms, My X Company, T Money, Power Up Money, Grow. So इन सब में ये information मिल जाता है.
So basically जैसे आपने ये ग्रिड बनाया, और जैसे कोई अगर somebody is choosing mutual funds, तो उसमें AI का कैसे लेवरेज कर सकता है, बिकॉज अभी उससे काफी काम आसान हो गया.
So you have to go to notebooklm.google. So let's look at Sailesh Raj Bhan, the Nippon guy. So what I did for this is a very simple exercise. I went to YouTube and I pulled out a lot of the podcasts with this, which this fund manager has done with other people. So just for example, this one. Okay, so Mr. Bhan has done this particular thing with ET Money. So I just take the URL, this one, and I would paste it in sources. So if you add to sources, go to YouTube and you can paste this URL here. Notebook LM will start processing whatever information is there inside that particular YouTube video, and it will start offering us different options. So I think I took some 10 different sources and I added it here. And as a result of this, the next step is you have to go to this thing called mind map. So if you click on it, a mind map gets generated. I'll just open this for you and see. Now, this is what I wanted to explain. So for Mr. Sailesh Raj Bhan, if you want to understand his philosophy, you just have to click on this. And a summary will be created of his complete methodology. So जैसे ये है कि GARP पे focus करना, valuations, controls over allocation, structural growth. So it's, giving you a nice summary of what Mr. Bhan's entire philosophy is as far as fund stock picking is concerned. Similarly, whatever outlook he has given, so it talks about that. Then sectoral preferences, market cycles and behavior. So this one document, which, you have not even read it. It's just giving you a proper summary of it. That can help you understand the person to whom, more about the person to whom you are giving your 10,000 rupees or 50,000 rupees of capital every month.
Can you share the selection criteria of individual stocks? I think you have quite a lot.
I have a preference on how I do it. So this is stocks now. I've been a little placid when it comes to stocks over the last, you can say, 7-8 months. Given the way market is, थोड़ा flat होने का ही था, so इसलिए मैंने इस पे ज़्यादा वो नहीं किया. So it's currently at 1.25. So all these have generally done well. The top holdings generally do well. So this one's up by 3 times. This is 5 times. This is 3.5 times. This is 5 times. Stuff like that. Yeah, so there are obviously specific reasons why I chose all of this. But generally what you'll see is that I follow the GARP methodology, and there is a slight commonality between all these things. I can share a few of them with you. So let's take, except for this, so let's take this top 4, probably go to screener. Okay, persistent systems, and you can forget the P ratio for now. So if you look at just the EPS part of it, you can see a nice linear looking line which is happening, right? Which shows that this particular company is increasing its earnings per share almost on a quarterly basis. So this is with persistent. And if you see any of the others, so if you go to Kaplan Point also, I think very likely to see a similar thing. See, the price might go here and there. Okay, let's see the last 5 years ka price. See, the price was down, it went up, and then now it's pretty flattish. But if you look at, same with the P ratio, it goes up and down. But if you focus only on the EPS, you can again see that nice linear growth that's happening with the earnings per share. So the reason why I try and look at this is because there's a simple rule that if a company increases its EPS, then generally good things happen to the stock price also. If the EPS increases, so does the stock price. We can see the others also. So Himadri Specialty also. See, we can see again that growth which is there, and yeah, I think Banco is also similar. Yeah, so it's a bit more staggered than the others, but generally the concept is that I try and go for those companies where the EPS is growing at a steady pace. So I'm really not looking for anyone who's kind of going to do a breakout kind of a quarter. Kabhi karta hu, matlab I try and see what can work best here. But if you ask for a preference cycle from me, I would generally want companies, where you can see this nice line going up on an EPS basis. Also, if I can share very quickly, when I bought Himadri, I think I started to buy at a price of 42 rupees per share. It's now at 460 something. But the reason why you see an average buy price of 150 is because I kept on buying this particular stock in the assumption that, it's going to do even better. And that actually worked. So this is higher, even with Banco. So Banco had a slightly hard time very recently, actually. Yeah, this one. So around this time when Banco was down, I bought more. And again, it's gone up because nothing had basically changed in that company. So if you look at that P ratio once again, this is that period, where it was down. So I saw, everything seems to be going up trajectory wise. So why are we even kind of thinking too much? So this became a very opportunity, an opportunity to buy more. Same thing with Kaplan Point also. It's again a stock where I've been buying consistently, and whenever there are dips like this, I buy a little more. So that's how the entire thing works. So the principle is to find businesses where there is consistency in earnings performance and those which are available at a slightly lower kind of valuation.
How do you shortlist these companies?
Yeah, so I think one easy way of doing it is using Screener itself. Let's do that as well. So as I said, we're looking at EPS growth, right? So if you do a EPS growth estimate of, let's take a high number. Let's take 20%. And EPS growth rate over 5 years is also 20. And EPS growth rate over 3 years is also 20. This will give you a set of companies, 300 odd companies which are there. And this kind of starts the thing rolling. So if you see, there are very popular names here, including Bajaj Finance, TVS, Varun, Aicha, Adani. Okay, there's a lot of people that come in. And then once you have a list like this available based on the EPS, then we start looking for valuation comfort as well. So for example, you can look at the PE ratio, the price to earning ratio, and it should ideally be less than 35 if possible. And that kind of prunes down the list. Okay, again, still a pretty decent list, but it prunes it down to whatever number you can find. And then the third criteria for me is obviously looking at industries which you are more comfortable with. So for example, I have no idea on, how finance companies work or how banks work, etc. So realty is another one which I generally tend to avoid. So you knock off whatever you think doesn't work for you, and you only work with those companies, which kind of suit your way of working. So you can see that the list goes down by another 40 odd companies. So this is basically how I do it. And then I study each and every company even further to understand what the growth prospects are, how is it likely to do, what's the management of that company, are there any kind of corporate governance issues which are there, and that's how I tend to go about it.
And now we also have an AI. So
the AI is extremely useful. I was showing you that, right? So I was doing this yesterday. This is Vishnu Chemicals. Have you heard of this company?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a very small company. It's just 3,400 crores of market cap. but it's into these two chemicals called chromium and barium. And domestically they have a market share of 60% with chromium and 40% with barium. It's a very interesting model to understand, as to what they are doing, what their growth ambitions are, etc. And one of the most amazing facts which I've got to know, while researching for this company is that China, which is the world's biggest consumer of stainless steel, it consumes like 55 to 60% of the world's stainless steel. They have only 2% of the world's chromite reserves. So, एक stainless steel के अंदर ना 10 to 18% is actually chromium that goes inside stainless steel. So, China actually has to import a lot of chromium from countries like South Africa, Kazakhstan, Turkey, even India to actually make stainless steel. So, Vishnu is one of those companies and they're doing all kinds of decent stuff. So that's what I do.
And what would be the exit criteria?
So exit criteria is definitely not overvaluation. So I'm okay with companies being overvalued. That's not a problem. The bigger exit criteria comes in if the company starts changing its business plans. I think that becomes the primary exit criteria because usse fir mere sare numbers hill jate hain, right? I can share an example here. So I have this company called Sterlite Technologies. This company used to say in some earnings call that we will do ABC. And then in the very next earnings call, out of ABC, A gayab ho jata tha. And then they will say we will do BCD. But by the time the third earnings call would come, B, C, dono gayab ho gaya and then it become EF. So they were changing the goalposts in every earnings call, which I always say is, for me at least, it's the biggest danger because it brings in a lot of uncertainty to my thinking at least. So that doesn't work. The second issue is, which again becomes a selling criteria, is any kind of hanky-panky that happens in the management, both in terms of the management resigning or some kind of a corporate governance issue that happens. So that becomes the second criteria for selling a company. I don't move out of a company just because it's overvalued. That was never the criteria when I was choosing that particular stock, which is why it's not a criteria when it comes to selling a particular stock.
So there was I think strategy, a video that you made around index fund. One can get, or at least in the back tested data, you can get around 26%. So can you share that?
So the momentum index on a back testing basis, if we take the Nifty 200 momentum 30, which is mostly large and a little bit of mid, that has over a 10-year period given some 16-17% in terms of CAGR. If you go for the Nifty mid cap 150 momentum 50 index, that is closer to 25% in terms of CAGR. So that single index has done 25%, which is quite a remarkable number because, 1 rupee compounded at 25.9% is actually 10 rupees in 10 years, right? So that has done well. I myself have momentum funds, the SIPs which are running and the corpus which I have. The last 1 year has been quite terrible for momentum schemes. But I'll give you the trajectory kaise hua tha. So when I started this Nifty 200 momentum 30, it started at an NAV of some 10 rupees. Usi time pe aaya tha, the UTI Nifty 200 momentum 30 had come in. So I'd invested around 10 rupees, 10.2 or something. And within a matter of 2 years or 2.5 years, it shot up to 25. So there was 150% return that happened in a matter of 2.5 years. And then from 25 it came down to 18. So there was this nice volatility that's there with respect to momentum. But generally, I've done all kinds of research around it. And generally, you can expect about 16% from a momentum scheme. So that's what is there.
Okay, thank you so much, sir, for coming. And it was an amazing experience.
No, my pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. ओके तो इस संडे का वेबिनार ज्वाइन करने का लिंक हमने डिस्क्रिप्शन और फर्स्ट कमेंट में दे दिया है. सी यू इन द वेबिनार.